Welcome to SI Now. I'm Madeline Burke. He's Robin Lundberg. We've got sports gambling, OTAs, and NBA Combine to talk about today. But let's start with the NBA playoffs. The Cleveland Cavaliers have dug themselves out of an 0-2 hole, even things out with the Celtics with emphatic wins at the Q. Robin, has this changed? What's changed for the Cavs here?
Well, a few things have changed. One, Tristan Thompson really is effective guarding Al Horford. And Al Horford has been the facilitator for Boston throughout this playoffs. With him negated, they're struggling to score a little bit, and that's where the absence of Kyrie Irving shows itself. Two, the Cavs remembered that they're the older, more experienced team. The Celtics are a bunch of kids compared to the Cavs, and they allowed themselves to be bullied in games 1 and games 2. They sort of reversed that in these 2 games in Cleveland. 3, I think LeBron has figured out the Celtics defense. It's almost like a predator against the prey. He's seeking out those switches against Terry Rozier. 16 shots in the paint in game 4. And it bears mentioning that LeBron James scores 44 points on 60% shooting. We're like, ho-hum, passes Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for most field goals in the playoffs. Whatever. I mean, we're talking about a guy averaging 34, 9, and 9 on 55% shooting. It's very likely he's in the midst of the best playoff run anyone's ever had.
Yeah, he's playing pretty good. I would not describe his play as ho-hum at all. I think LeBron James is playing very well, but the other Cavs, as reference to Donald Glover's SNL sketch, they are stepping up at home. And I think role players tend to play better at home, and we're seeing that a lot with the Cavaliers. But also the Celtics on the road have not been played well on the road, and a series does not start until someone loses at home. Right now, even though it's 2-2, it's a 3-game series, Celtics still have that home advantage.
I mean, those other Cavs play well, as you mentioned. It allows LeBron to do some other things, have some reserve for energy on defense. Now, heading back to Boston, Brad Stevens says they're looking forward to getting themselves back up off the mat. Do you think they turn it back around to what we saw early in the series and recover?
I do. I think that they can turn it around because I think we've seen the Celtics made some adjustments and made some improvements from Game 3 to Game 4. It wasn't enough to get a win on the road, but they have not won a home game in regulation since March, or a road game in regulation since March 28th. Now, but they are undefeated at home in the playoffs right now, and the point differential is ridiculous. You know, at home in the postseason, Celtics score almost 112 points. On the road, they're about 98. At home, they're allowing 101.1 points per 100 possessions. On the road, 111. I mean, there's a huge discrepancy there. And I think the thing you mentioned earlier, the fact that this is a young, less experienced playoff team, that home court, that Celtics TD Garden crowd is really helpful and really necessary to get these young guys riled up on this big stage.
No doubt it has been. I just wonder a little bit with it now 2-2, does the pressure fall on them? And you know LeBron's going to be ready come game 5.
LeBron James has shown that he can dig out of a hole. I mean, if this man has been down 3-1 in the finals and come back, so there's really nothing I would say he can't do. To the Western Conference, though, Andre Iguodala banged his knee against James Harden in Game 3 of the Western Conference Finals. Now, while the X-ray came back clean, Iggy's bruise reportedly got worse overnight. He's now doubtful for Game 4. How does this affect the chance for the Rockets to even it up?
Well, it helps them, right? It gets me back into this trap I've been falling into, which is, all right, let's see if they have a chance, and then find out, have your dreams crushed a few minutes later, because, you know, I joke that any team that gets 2 off of the Warriors should get a ring. And this is how good the Warriors are. You see Curry and Durant, right? It sucks because it makes me think about injuries in a way where you're talking about that as the analysis of the series. And you never want to be rooting for an injury, of course, but the only thing I think that makes Golden State vulnerable is somebody going down. Right. Of course, we saw Curry down early in the playoffs. Iguodala has been a key cog for what they do, gives them a lot of versatility to the famed Hamptons 5.
Iguodala was a key piece in this success so far in the postseason. And, you know, one thing about Houston and the way that they have been able to succeed in the playoffs, I mean, their offense, they create mismatches to get open threes. But there are really no mismatches against Golden State. And even with Iguodala going down, I think Looney's going to step up. We're going to see a lot more from him. And that's one thing that the Warriors have that not a lot of other teams do. A lot of guys that can step up and play, and there aren't really a lot of mismatches there. I think that the Rockets have a chance, but it's still going to be tough.
Yeah, at least they have a chance, though.
What was all that 1 in a million talk, hey?
Meanwhile, football is here. At least organized team activities are. But the news wasn't defined by who was back on the field, but rather by who wasn't. Notable absences from the voluntary workouts included Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Donald, and Julio Jones. Does it matter when guys don't show up for these?
I think it's situational. I mean, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. For example, with Tom Brady, he's, at that stage in his career, he's very established. Would it be helpful for the rest of this Patriots team if Brady and Gronkowski were there? Yeah, because these OTAs are to build chemistry. But again, it's voluntary. With Aaron Donald, I mean, he's using this as leverage. He wants to get paid. He's in the 5th year of his rookie deal, and he's a 4-time Pro Bowler, reigning Defensive Player of the Year, and he's making, what, $6 million? He wants to get that money at this stage in his career. But, I mean, if you look at a guy like the Giants, Odell Beckham, he was there, despite the fact that he is still dealing with injuries, and he is still being cautiously included in some of these activities in the OTAs. They have a new coach, a new GM, a new regime, a new system in place. It's important for players to show up when you're changing direction like the Giants franchise is. So I think OTAs are situational when it comes to mandatory minicamp. When it comes to training camp, that's when you start raising flags if people aren't there.
I think the two noteworthy ones are Beckham and Brady. Beckham for the reasons you mentioned. And then Brady, let's be honest, he's clearly sending a message to the Patriots here. We have too much evidence to say that. So I do think it is significant that he made it a point not to show up.
I can see that. I can see that. All right, in the wake of the Supreme Court's recent ruling on sports gambling, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell issued a statement outlining 4 core principles that he believes need to accompany the legalization of wagering on sports. Now, first, there must be substantial consumer protections. The second being sports leagues can protect our content and intellectual property from those who attempt to steal or misuse it. The third, he says, fans will have access to official, reliable league data. And the fourth, law enforcement will have the resources, monitoring, and enforcement tools necessary to protect our fans and penalize bad actors here at home and abroad. Now, Goodell obviously prioritizing protecting the integrity of the sport in the wake of these new allowances. What's your reaction to this?
Just enjoy it, Roger. You're about to make a lot more money. I mean, people bet a ton of money on the NFL. Of course these things are concerns, right? But sports gambling was basically frowned upon before. I feel like the way it was run was actually more risky because you have the underbelly running things, and once it is legitimized, you have less to worry about. Right. So if you're confident in your product, just let your product show. You can hold the reaction of Roger Goodell head up with the reaction of Adam Silver, and there's your proof.
I think legalizing sports gambling is like legalizing marijuana. You're not changing who's doing it, you're just changing how. And I think, wagering on football is, like you said, nothing new. It's part of the culture with fantasy football. I mean, even dating back to Steve Serby's Mr. Loser column in the New York Post, it's always been a thing. You bet on these games. I think the important thing to recognize and to realize, though, is that the leagues are taking a priority to prevent potential tampering or potential foul play to involve the gambling.
I just would think that was assumed. I don't know if I need Roger Goodell to tell me that.
You'd have to assume it. You'd like to assume it. But I think, you see other leagues in other countries that have had some really horrible things happen to soccer players in South America or something like that because of gambling. You don't want to see that go awry.
Meanwhile, the NBA Draft Combine just wrapped up in Chicago. Earlier, I got to talk with our own Jeremy Woo, who was in attendance. Jeremy, you were at the NBA Draft Combine. Of all the participants, whose stock rose the most?
I think there were 3 players who really popped in the 5-on-5. One of them was Kevin Huerter from Maryland, who I think was kind of on the cusp of the first round. I don't think he's made up his mind whether or not he's going to go back to school. I think if he comes out, he'll probably be a first-round pick now. He shot the ball really well, playing with an injured finger. Really passed it well. He's got good size for a shooting guard, tested well athletically. So I think he's one guy who I think will be sort of a very interesting decision to follow in the next few days coming up to the deadline.
But what about the other side of that? Whose stock fell?
I think there were a few guys who didn't play as well. I think, Tyus Battle from Syracuse is a guy who scouts wanted to see a little bit more of, who was sort of in that, early to late mix first, second round. Shake Milton from SMU kind of sort of blended into the pack. And then another guy is Brian Bowen, who, was there after sitting out the whole year due to the FBI investigation. Didn't really look like he belonged. So he's going to be a sort of a tough place, not knowing what his eligibility situation is at South Carolina.
Now, I know you're constantly updating your mock draft, but there's been one constant. You have DeAndre Ayton at number 1. The Suns taking him number 1 overall. Why are you still standing by that pick?
I just think Ayton's the best prospect. And I think, it's, if you look at the situation the Suns are in, they kind of need to start, moving things in the right direction. They have talent. I don't think they're in a position to really take a big risk. I think Ayton, is the guy who you'd want. And, I know between, Luka Doncic and his connections with Igor Kokoshkov, the coach, but I think it's worth noting, Igor was the 3rd guy the Suns were looking at, right? So, very good coach, but I don't think that they're going to, make the pick just based solely on what the coach would want. So I think that's a factor, but I don't think that'll be sort of the defining decision maker.
Now, Doncic was the EuroLeague MVP at just 19. What about the concerns? Because I have some concerns about bigs defending now, the way the floor is spaced out. You don't think that could be problematic for Ayton?
I don't, because I think he actually moves his feet pretty well on the perimeter. And I think a lot of the struggles he had, some of it's effort-based, and I think that can be coached. But I think also, if you looked at, the team around him in Arizona, it was a team that struggled, as a whole defensively. I don't think they were very cohesive. I was out there, saw them play a lot. And, so I think part of it is the youth of that team, too. And, he was playing out of position. I think you have to give him the benefit of the doubt a little bit in terms of the defensive aspect.
Now, we saw Donovan Mitchell sort of emerge as a sleeper, not a heavily touted guy, and, of course, one of the best rookies. Who could be this year's Donovan Mitchell?
I don't know if anyone's going to be the next Donovan Mitchell. He might have sort of outclassed that. But I think Lonnie Walker is a guy you can look at sort of who maybe sneaking the lottery, maybe in the top 20, very athletic player. Sort of has some of those same physical traits. It's still sort of a ways off, but sort of has potential to become, a useful contributor. And I think I can't go without mentioning Dante DiVincenzo, who played really, really well at the Combine. I think is probably going to be a first-round pick.
He played well in a certain game too, didn't he?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you might have heard. You might have heard Dante had a good March, right?
Yeah.
So he's a guy who I think you can look at too, sort of outside that top group.
Now, when the draft comes around, we'll probably be in full LeBron speculation season. Depending on what LeBron does, obviously that draft pick could be used as a trade chip. But if he leaves, what does Cleveland do?
It's definitely tricky for Cleveland, knowing that they might not have him. But I think that the philosophy needs to be the same, where, you come in, you take the best player available who can help you. Whether or not he comes back, you want, they need to get younger, period, if you look at some of the guys in that team, particularly in the backcourt. So I think, if Trae Young is there, maybe if Colin Sexton is there, a guard like that might be a good solution to sort of plug in at point and sort of, whether or not LeBron's back, have someone to sort of build around.
Plus, if LeBron leaves, they'll be picking fairly high in the draft, I would imagine, again next year.
Right. Yeah, you'd think that if he's gone, they'll be back in the lottery. So they'll have more chances to do it.
Jeremy Wu, our NBA draft insider. Let's have some fun with internet memes. This one has been popping on NBA Twitter. You've got $15 to choose your 5 from this list of superstars. Who's your squad and why?
Well, first of all, I got to point out that Kevin Durant being $2, that's a must for me. So Kevin Durant is on my squad. Then I'm reuniting the Kobe and Shaq Lakers era. I mean, Kobe said last month that his Lakers team with Shaq could beat this Warriors team. Plus, you got AI in there. You got Dirk, the classic. I feel like this team as constructed is going to have some serious locker room issues, but they would put on a show on the court.
You didn't take into account team chemistry and putting this
Who
together?
needs chemistry if you're balling?
All right, here's my lineup. I'm going to go with Kevin Garnett at center because he can facilitate offensively but also get out of the way and shoot jump shots while anchoring a defense. The lineup I put together I think has a lot of versatility defensively and offensively. Of course, LeBron James is there for obvious reasons. Steph Curry provides that shooting. Plus, Steph Curry and Kevin Durant have played together, as have LeBron
Look at this.
and
this
Wade.
Is like the full GM mindset, and mostly these modern players as well.
And we know Kevin Durant is used to playing on a stacked team, so that's helpful. And the modern play, the reason I choose a lot of modern players and I want a little bit of throwback defense is because I think the modern game is the most effective.
And really, anything is possible.
As KG would say. We're joined now by former Philadelphia Phillies first baseman, World Series champion Ryan Howard, who's here for his venture capital firm, 76 Capital, 76capital.com. Ryan, we'll get to your post-baseball career in a minute, but let's talk Philadelphia for a second. You celebrated the Eagles' Super Bowl win with your former World Series teammate Cole Hamels. Between the Eagles, 76ers, Phillies, Flyers, Villanova, what do you make of the state of sports in Philadelphia right now?
It's a great place to be right now. It's a fun place to be come sports time right now. The Phillies have been doing great this year. Obviously, like you said, the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, being able to go up there, hang out with my man Hollywood, and kind of help celebrate that and kind of rehash and relive some of those memories. I mean, it's a fun time to be in Philadelphia. Everything's clicking up there right now.
Your former team, the Phillies, appear to be making some strides with the young core there. They got a big series against the Braves, a chance at the NL East lead. What are the keys for them to get to where you guys once were?
I mean, I think they're on the right track right now. It's just continuing to get experience and being able to go out there and just finishing games. I think that was one of the biggest things and biggest problems the last few years is just not being able to go out and finish games. And this year they've been able to go do that. There's always been the talent. There's always been, a good core group of guys. The guys have always had great positive attitudes. It's just a matter of going out and finishing games, and that's what they're doing now. That's the biggest difference I see right now.
Now, reading the notes before, it says you've joined a new team. What is it about your venture capitalist ambitions here that makes that another winning team in Philadelphia?
Yeah, my new squad over here, 76 Capital, also based out of Philadelphia. Can't get away from Philly, man. Gotta love it, man. No, we're doing great things, man. Over here at 76, we're investing in great young game-changing entrepreneurs. Just recently, we've invested in a company, Shot Tracker, which is a Central-based company in the basketball realms that is located right now in Kansas, University of Kansas, Oklahoma, TCU, Baylor, where you're able to gather information on how many shots a player has taken during practice or during the games. It's an awesome company to be a part of right now.
Oh, we're talking 76. You got to talk the 76ers. They're out of the playoffs, but the process has finally paid off. People are excited. There's been some rumors about LeBron headed there in the offseason. Why should he choose Philly, and do you think he will?
I mean, I don't think there's anywhere else for him to go in the East. I mean, I think Philly would be a great fit. The city, the fans, the process, as you said, is working. And I think there's a mutual love. I mean, I think that Ben Simmons' game is somewhat patterned a little bit after LeBron's, just from my opinion of what I've been able to kind of watch and how he's coming to his own with Embiid, and I think that would be a great fit.
So he can Yoda Ben Simmons as Luke Skywalker, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, however you want to do it. You can go Han Solo. You can go Billy D. However you want to do it.
Tony Stark to Spider-Man in the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Going back to baseball for a second, the Yankees and the Red Sox are generally a big topic there. Their lineups have been crazy good. We sort of knew with Stanton going to the Yankees, but the Red Sox have been right there too with Martinez and Betts. Where do you think those lineups right now compare historically to some of the best you've ever seen?
I mean, it's tough. I usually don't like to try to compare eras because it's just two completely different eras and types of games. The Yankees is basically a modern day murderer's row where you're looking at Stanton, you're looking at Judge, you're looking at Didi Gregorius. I mean, you can't even go to sleep on my man Gardner. I mean, Gardner will put you in the seats as well. So it's one of those teams where as a pitcher, you're not really getting a break anywhere throughout that lineup. And then you switch over to the Red Sox. Mookie Betts is killing you at the top. Everybody through that entire lineup is going to give you a great at bat. JD Martinez, my man Hanley over there, like all those guys are going to really put you to the test as a pitcher. And right now it's tough to be a pitcher facing either one of those lineups.
We talk about comparing eras, and you brought that up. There's the LeBron Jordan debate in basketball, and that comes up. What's the biggest difference between when you played and what you're watching now in Major League Baseball? What's the biggest era difference?
I think the velocity, the pitching velocity is one of the things. When I first came in, a lot of the guys, a lot of the starters were sitting somewhere in between 88 to 90, maybe 92 on average for the most part. But then, you're usually seeing your closer is the one who's throwing 95 miles per hour plus. Now you have more pitchers that are sitting at 94. Your starters are sitting at 94, 95. You've got your relievers coming in at 94, 95, 96, 97. And closers are coming in, anywhere between 97 to 100 miles an hour for the most part. So I would definitely say the pitching velocity has definitely increased over that time.
You know, in this business, we ask about who the face of baseball is a lot. If there's that, you know, there are great players, but is there that transcendent star? Who would you say is the face of baseball right now?
It's got to be like Mike Trout, Bryce Harper. I mean, those guys, what they've done, what they are to the game right now. You know, I think even with what Shohei's doing, I think he comes in. This is his first year. You know, he's got to kind of get in, get his feet wet, get established, and do something. But the track record of what Trout has done, the track record of what Bryce Harper has done, I think, you know, when you're mentioning Major League Baseball, those are probably the two names that come to mind first.
Ryan, appreciate the time today. You have any last-second financial startup advice you want to give to people?
Man, hey, if anybody's got any good ideas, game-changing ideas, man, hit me up at 76capital.com. It's right here on the shirt. And, hey, we're always looking for a great game-changing entrepreneur. So I appreciate you guys for having me on.
Have you seen this? U.S. soccer legend Brandi Chastain's Hall of Fame plaque is not exactly flattering. We've seen the Ronaldo bust and the Tom Brady courtroom sketch, yet this may now be tops for worst depiction of a star athlete. How could someone screw up this bad? That looks nothing like Brandi Chastain. It looks like Babe Ruth, played by Melissa McCarthy.
She's a beautiful girl, Brandi Chastain, and this bust of her looks more like Mike Francesa. I think that's the best comparison I've seen on the internet today. However, though, I feel like that's like some sort of like badge of honor to have like a bad depiction of you, because you'll never stop talking about the Ronaldo bust. We'll never stop talking about the Tom Brady sketch. She's joined the club. I mean, this has really elevated her status.
Yeah, it elevates the talk about, you know, how she actually looks, right? Because people are like, this can't be right. I mean, you shouldn't look like the statue of Archie Bunker outside Port Authority bus station.
The worst is going to be is if this remains and in like 100 years, people are like, yeah, oh, she was really good. Wow, she looked a little rough. Like, that's how she's going to be remembered.
Would it get inside your head at all? Like, if I saw myself depicted like that, I'd go, wait, is that how I look? Is that how you
see me?
Word?
Is this how you see me? I would, no, no, not about it. All right, elsewhere on the internet, though, John Harbaugh says he's going to take Michigan to South Africa, not without some criticism. He's been getting some heat for that decision. Is it really fair, though, to criticize him for doing this for the team?
Of course not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, if you were a college kid, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want to go on a trip like this? Shouldn't this sort of thing be encouraged? We're talking about culture and learning and all that
and
stuff.
not even just that, but also team building. I mean, when you go on a road trip with a team, whether it's to a road game or to South Africa or to some other experience, and you share that together, that brings teams closer together. That helps build that chemistry, which is important for the season ahead.
Yeah, and does it have any impact whatsoever on the chase for a national championship? I just don't see how those things are related. It's just proof that people will complain about anything.
I feel like it's clear that he's doing this because he wants to build that chemistry to drive them towards a national championship, not to distract them. It's not like he's saying like, oh, hey, instead of game prep this week, we're going to go to Disneyland.
Finally, Game 4, Rockets and Warriors tonight in San Francisco. Who you got?
I think it's going to be a one-possession game, but I think the Rockets might edge it out.
Edge it out. The Rockets edge it out. That would make things pretty interesting if they actually. I mean,
then
the pressure would go to the Warriors. More pressure than they've had this entire run with Kevin Durant there.
You got to put these bold predictions out there and then see if they take it. If not, then whatever.
Yeah, just forget about it, right?
You know what?
Like a bad bust of yourself. We'll be back tomorrow, same time and same place. In the meantime, check out @SI Now Live on Twitter for the latest videos and updates. Face is pretty.
My bust face.